So I did a Q&A video last week where I answered some of your questions and discussed certain topics you guys were interested in. In that video, I asked you guys to comment down below any questions you'd like me to answer, and if we got enough, I'd make a second video. Well, one comment really stood out to me, and it was this one by Markus Biersack. Markus basically wanted to know who I thought is the darkest Cosmere character. And while that would have made a great question in a Q&A video, I think it would be even better as a video on its own. So today we'll be looking at my top 5 darkest Cosmere characters. Some of these are obviously and overtly dark, others have a deeper, more hidden darkness within them. And since this list is only 5 long, there will obviously be some characters that I've missed, so if there's a character that I didn't mention, then feel free to mention that character in the comment section below. And of course, this list is in no particular order. But with all of that out of the way, let's jump right in with the first entry. Zane. Zane is a character that I personally don't really care much for, but when you look deeper at him as a character, you'll soon notice that there's more to him than what's immediately apparent. To really understand Zane and how he came to be the way he is, when we meet him in the second Mistborn book, Well of Ascension, you have to look at his past. Zane had an incredibly rough childhood. Having been born to a Scar mother and noble father, you'd be right in assuming that his life wasn't an easy one. Then consider that his father is Straff Venture, who is probably one of the most vindictive and ruthless men in the Final Empire. And due to a hemalurgic spike he embedded into himself, he also has a direct link of communication with Ruin. This, along with the abuse he experienced as a child, resulted in his mind becoming incredibly unhinged. He's self-destructive, manipulative, and deeply sadistic. And as I said, he's definitely not my favorite character, but in a list of my top 5 darkest characters, he definitely deserves a spot. Dilaaf. Dilaaf from Elantris is actually a fairly tragic character in his own right. He's still a raving lunatic, don't get me wrong, but similar to Zane, his darkness comes from a deeper pain felt in his past. Having been deeply entrenched in the hierarchy of the religion of Shu-Dereth, Dilaaf had to face expulsion and charges of blasphemy when his wife became gravely ill. Nobody could save her, and his only hope became the magic of the Elantrians. Shu-Dereth proclaimed the Elantrians as heretical dark sorcerers, but all Dilaaf cared for was the life of the woman he loved. But despite facing retribution by his own religion, and despite having to overcome his own religious apprehension, he still trusted in the Elantrians. Unfortunately, his wife was not saved by their magic, and she tragically died. This sent Dilaaf into a never-ending rage. With that hatred, he began his quest for the vengeance against the Elantrians for their failure in saving his wife's life. And like I said, Dilaaf is still a raging lunatic, but I can at least understand where he is coming from. His life and the path that brought him to where he came to be at the end of Elantris was actually quite tragic in a way. Taravangian. Taravangian is probably the scariest one on this list in my opinion. And that's not even considering the end of Rhythm of War. Unlike the previous 2 entries, Taravangian's darkness doesn't come from his past, but rather from the kind of man that he is. You see, Taravangian is the kind of man who believes deeply in his own righteousness. He believes that he is a morally good person and that he only wants to avoid as much death as possible. With the desolation at hand, all he wants is to save as many people as possible in the war. The only problem is that he's the kind of man that believes that as long as his ends are just, the means are warranted. Spoken simply, Taravangian will kill 10,000 people if it means that 100 will survive. And that's not because he values certain lives more, but rather that he believes that since the death of a large majority is inevitable, he won't bother to avoid it and will rather try to save what he can. And sure, having this kind of attitude in many people wouldn't be a huge issue. A husband that feels this way may do well in protecting his family. A squad captain who feels this way may do well in ensuring that as many of his own men make it home as possible. But Taravangian was a king, and now he is a god. A man that believes the ends justify the means and that his actions are justified because they are morally right has been given the power of a god. and that terrifies me more than Zane or Dilaaf ever could. Moash. Okay, so ignoring the controversial nature of Moash as a character in the fandom, he is also a deeply tragic character. Not only is he tragic, but he also highlights a frighteningly disturbing part of human nature. You see, Moash followed a path that Kaladin easily could have gone down. Moash was a dark-eyed man who lost close family members and friends due to the direct influence and actions of light-eyed Bright Lords. In Kaladin's case, he lost Tien, his family, and many comrades due to Amaram. For Moash, it was Alokar. Many people seem to forget that Alokar was to Moash as Amaram was to Kaladin. But unlike Kaladin, who faced that loss within him and decided to keep going and to keep protecting those he cared about, Moash chose another route. Moash embraced odium because the god offered to take away Moash's pain and regret. Odium could give Moash a numbness that would wash it all away, and Moash took that offer. Many of us condemn Moash, but I also think that many people would end up making the exact same decisions as he did. Imagine your parents were killed due to the negligence of a king and you had a chance at revenge. Then imagine that after taking that chance at revenge for the death of the people that you loved most, you knew that your actions meant you would lose all your friends and comrades. Then a godly being came to you and said that while he couldn't make your friends accept you again, he could take away your pain, anger, and shame. This is the story of Moash, and it's a story I think many would repeat given the same circumstances. I still condemn Moash's actions, but I think that people need to have a deeper look into why he made those decisions. It was not because he was evil, it was because he was human. Kelsier. Kelsier is actually not a character that I thought would end up on this list, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. I'm currently working on a character study video of Kelsier himself, and it should be out very soon, but making that video caused me to realize some things. What became immediately apparent is that Kelsier could easily have become the Lord Ruler as well. And I don't mean he would have been the same man exactly, I mean he would have easily ended up as a tyrant had the circumstances been different. Kelsier is a multi-dimensional character that on the surface looks very kind and amiable, but underneath holds quite a bit of darkness in him. He has a deeply seated desire to be the center of attention and to appear larger than life. He believes strongly in his cause and will go to any lengths to achieve his goals. And if you happen to be on the side of his enemies, Kelsier will not hesitate to mercilessly spill your blood. The amount of times that Kelsier not only killed nobility but also just the regular Scar guardsmen was actually quite shocking. And if you've read Secret History, you'll also realize that Kelsier was more closely attuned to ruin than preservation. In a way, he was an agent of ruin, bringing down the empire that kept the god at bay. And for all his talking of missing his wife, when he was given the chance, he decided to stay behind as a cognitive shadow instead of going back to her. And now he's the leader of the most ruthless secret society on Roshar as well. Say what you will, Kelsier has some deeply entrenched darkness in him. Sure, he was a hero in Mistborn, but given a different set of circumstances without the oppression of the Lord Ruler and the hell of the Final Empire, would he still have turned into a hero? Or would he follow a different path? Kelsier is the perfect example of the famous quote from The Dark Knight. You either die a hero, or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Anyway, that has been it from me for today, guys. Did I miss any dark characters? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe as well. As always, thank you very much for watching. My name has been Raven, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody.